Hellish Part 2, The Return of the Shadows. The flames from the cabin danced in a grotesque ballet under the moonlight, illuminating the terrified faces of Philip, Dan, and Tjindu. The beast's anguished howls echoed through the wilderness, a haunting reminder of the darkness they had unleashed. As the fire consumed the creature, the men felt a sense of fleeting victory, but dread also crept in as they realized the price of their actions. As dawn broke, the cacophony of the night faded into a haunting silence, broken only by the cawing of crows circling above. With the fire still crackling in the distance, the three men took a moment to gather themselves and piece together the events of the previous night. Tjindu, who had long understood the balance between man and nature, looked grave. "We have disturbed something far greater than we had imagined. This is not finished," he murmured. "We need to warn the others," Philip said, glancing at Dan. "More of those beasts could be out there." Reluctantly, they began their journey back to the village, each step heavy with the burden of guilt for what had transpired. As they walked through the still frozen wilderness, they couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. The shadows around them seemed to linger just a bit longer, and fleeting shapes darted just out of sight. Once in the village, Tjindu called an emergency meeting. The village gathered around as Tjindu spoke of the creature they had faced, revealing more about the evil that plagued their land. "It is not just a beast, it is a manifestation of lost souls and the greed of men. Our doing. It feeds not only on flesh, but on despair and hatred. If we do not act, it will grow stronger," he warned. The villagers were frightened, but many were skeptical. "You speak of spirits and shadows, but what we saw was a beast, nothing more," one young hunter shouted. "No," Tjindu exclaimed, "we cannot resist the urge to rationalize our encounter. We ignited a fire within the shadows that we may never extinguish." Weeks passed, and the sense of dread only deepened. Livestock began to disappear, and those who ventured into the woods spoke of whispers in the trees, the very echoes of darkness Tjindu had warned about. Starving and desperate, some men sought to hunt once more, convinced they could reclaim their dominance over nature. However, the forest had changed. It was no longer just a source of resources but a playground for the cursed spawn of their actions. One evening, Dan could no longer bear the torment of inaction. "I can't sit by while my family suffers," he announced to Philip and Tjindu. "What if we find the beast's den? If we confront it again, we may be able to destroy it." Philip, recalling the horrors of their last encounter, hesitated. "And what of the risks? We barely survived the last time." "We have no choice," Dan replied with determination. "If we unite, we may stand a chance." With hearts united by desperation, the three men set out at twilight, armed with muskets, daggers, and the fire striker. They ventured into the haunted woods, guided only by the bitter wind and the rhythm of their heartbeats. They pushed deeper into the shadows until they found the clearing where they had encountered the creature. At first, it appeared serene. The soft moonlight illuminated a gruesome scene. Remnants of past hunts lay scattered, stripped bones and tufts of fur. In the center stood a blackened tree, jagged and twisted, its bark marked with symbols that sent shivers down their spines. Tjindu recognized those markings, an ancient language of his ancestors, warnings of what lay ahead. "This tree is a portal," Tjindu whispered, trembling. "The creature we face doesn't wander these woods alone. It is drawn to the darkness we've fed." As they stood before the tree, the ground trembled, and from its shadows emerged the beast, much larger than before, its eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. Its form shifted like smoke, making it impossible to pinpoint its exact position. "Prepare yourselves," Tjindu roared, but before they could attack, the beast spoke in a voice that echoed like thunder. "You return to me, foolish mortals? Did you believe I would remain quiescent?" With no time to think, Philip fired the first shot. The moment the bullet struck, a shockwave rocked the air, and the beast screeched, the sound piercing through the night. But, to their horror, it only seemed to empower the creature more, its form swelling as it absorbed the fear of its attackers. "Dan, use the fire!" Tjindu shouted as he struggled against the beast's claw, trying to distract it. With a shaky hand, Dan struck the fire starter against his thigh, yelling, "Now!" The flames engulfed the creature, illuminating the darkness around them. But just as the fire consumed its body, the beast let out a deafening howl that echoed through the woods, shaking the very earth beneath their feet. The flames danced wildly before being snuffed out as the shadow reclaimed its form, a hybrid of human and nightmare. Tjindu realized in that moment that the beast was not just an aberration of nature, it was a reflection of the darkness in their hearts, greed, fear, and despair. "We must face it together, not with weapons, but with our strength of spirit," he yelled, rallying the others. In that moment of desperation, they joined hands, invoking the spirit of the land, calling upon the strength of their ancestors. The energy shifted, the shadows began to retreat, revealing the frightened form of George, pale and hollowed, standing bewildered at the edge of the clearing. "George!" Dan gasped, but George was not the same. The darkness twisted through his features, and he was gripped by the very essence of the creature. "It is too late for me," George croaked, tears streaming down his face. "But it's not too late for you." They focused their energy on George, drawing the shadows away from him, breaking the hold the darkness had upon him. As they channeled their inner strength, the darkness swirled into a tempest of shadows, no longer strong enough to contend with the unity of the living. In a final cry, George lunged toward Tjindu and the others, pushing the shadows away from himself and toward the beast. "You will not take my soul," he shouted, arcing back into the shadow realm, and with that, the beast was pulled back, shrieking in rage and pain. The air around them grew still as the shadows dissipated, leaving the forest illuminated by the first rays of dawn. The darkness was vanquished, and in its place, calm serenity enveloped the woods. As they emerged from the depths of the haunted forest, Dan, Philip, and Tjindu walked away with a newfound understanding of their connection to the land and the spirits that watched over them. They learned that to conquer darkness, one must first confront their own fears and work together in unity, lest they awaken the very shadows from within. From that day forward, they became guardians of their land, vowing to protect the balance between nature and humanity, forever remembering George's sacrifice and the lessons learned in the face of darkness. Thus concluded their battle, but marked the beginning of a new era, one where the voices of the ancestors would always be heeded, for the spirit of the land was intertwined with the humanity they had embraced.